Good morning. We are holding the Rambam Malveh veLoveh, and today we're going to discuss a halacha, two halachas, one here and a halacha that's similar in Perlstein that seems to contradict what he says here. So halacha is Perokim Dalet halacha Dalet. He writes, interesting case. Somebody has a shtar chayv. Ruvain has a shtar chayv that says that Levi owes him money. And Ruvain, the lender, claims, I haven't been paid anything on this shtar. Levi, on the other hand, veLoveh, says, it's not true. I paid you half. Then witnesses are there that say, what are you talking half? You paid him the whole amount. And we have a very interesting case. You have a case where you have Adam, and not only are supporting him, but are doing more than that. They're saying that he doesn't owe a penny. And he, on the other hand, is saying only half. So the Rambam tells us, based on the Gemara of Masra, it says like this: veLoveh swears like a meidu mixes, a nice machzah sheidu mixes, and then he provides a problem that the Gemara mentions, ve'enei k'meishu aveda, which would allow him to be patur neisha emes ashtaralo. I'm not going to get into the halachas of Meisha Aveda now because it's going to take too much time away from what we're focused on. Here comes the next halacha. The Malveh can only get his money from things that have not been sold. Halachas in general, if you have a shtar, even though you sold the items, the Malveh can go after the property that has been sold, and the buyer has to go back and get it from the borrower, because the money, the properties were designated, are all automatically designated to the loan by having a shtar, and that's called a shibud. And Allah is you gave him shabadim. But in this case, no, you can't touch it. Why? I don't allow him this one. I bought last time. Interesting lush. We rely on the Adam. There is no shtar therefore. They claim the shtar is false. Now let's get the case. Had the person not said a word, and the Adam come along, it would be great. He would be right. There's no question. He wouldn't have to pay a penny. Because he said half. Adam contradict him and say the whole. So there's like a state of limbo. What do you do? How do you go? Where do you go? That's interesting. The Gemara brings a story. The Gemara is not as elaborate as the Rambam. And all he says is, you can't take from Shabbatim, because the Lekucha say, Anana Adam Samachin, now we rely on the Adam. The Rambam goes on and says about the shtar and so on. Okay, so the Ravid, not on the Rambam, the Ravid in the Gemara, the Rishonim bring this question, Shem the Ravid. He asks three questions. First of all, I mean, it's three parts to a question. The first part is, why are we believing him to swear if there's a shtar that says he's obligated? You don't swear against the shtar. He has to pay. Oh, so you're going to tell me, because there's Adam, that I'm a battle shtar, and we rely on them, and then he doesn't have to swear altogether. Because if somebody's made the mixes that has Adam to support him, he doesn't have to swear. So you're going to tell me here, he and the Adam are clashing. And therefore, he's obligated to pay. then if you say there's a clash and therefore according to him the star is kosher, how can he swear again? Strong question, very strong. Okay, so here there are various answers amongst the Rishonim. Taisvis says you're right, there is no star. Because they say that the stars were is Peruas, right? However, and then when he takes the side against the Edom, doesn't make it a kosher star. Well, buys a veLoveh, and therefore veLoveh, you swear, you have to swear against. Forget about the star. Star's gone. You have a regular case. Reuben says you owe me $100. I say I paid you $50. Gotta get right. The Rashba said, could we have a suffix here? When he says paraiti, we don't know if he means that's all I remember, or it means paraiti, only half. I pay half. That's what I remember. I remember the whole. And therefore, the lekuches is something you can't take it away from me. But him, it's a suffix kosher, you can't rely on that. The Ran says a similar point. It's not really a suffix, but for him, it's an kosher, and therefore, and for Gabi the Edom, we don't care. Needs beer, but we'll get it. The Migash seems to learn that in Chanami, the Raiv's kasha, good kasha. The only issue is that it's a Rabbanon. The Shiur is with Rabbanon. Again, it's not clear, but that's what it seems. In the end, he writes the Chayvel issue. Okay, that's all of the answers to the Raiv's question. I'm going to get to how I believe the Rambam will have to answer the questions in a bit. The Rambam Milchus Tayim and it in Perek Zayin writes, isn't it a story? Mi shahoide bebezdin shani chayiv l'zeh hatayvei amona. Yes, I owe my money, one part of it. I owe him $100. He comes back and says, no, wait, I just remembered. I paid him. And here, I got witnesses that I paid. Those are the words of the Ram. These are Edom that help or do, and we do according to them. He didn't contradict them. Had he said veLoveh and the Edom would come along and said paraiti, no good. Now, this Rambam is like one of these very, very difficult Rambams to read because there's a lot in here, but it's unclear. So first of all, the Mishnah says that there's no source to this halacha, but it makes sense. And then they ask, but there seems to be a contradiction in this halacha and the halacha that we read, that we're learning today. Why? Because in this halacha, the Edom help, and in our halacha, the Edom don't help. And therefore, the Mishnah says that in our case, in Hilchas Malveh veLoveh, what we learned today is that's talking where he didn't say, I forgot. But if he would have said forgot, he'd be believed. That's, so he asked, why doesn't the Rambam explain that? Then he says, no, could be there's a difference. In our case, there's a star. If not of the Eidos, he wouldn't have been believed anything. But if here, in the case of Teiv and Nitten, he's only Chai because of his Eidah, therefore, he can change. And he says, I don't know. Adayin Sarchia. Okay. in the Gemara about Metzia, famous Gemara, there's a concept called Moedim Mixus, as we all know. Then there is a case of Edom, the Mixus. And the Gemara says, that's Taner Rabbi, and the famous Rabbi, and the Gemara says there are Svarat, that your Shalei Tehei Aidah Aspiv Gedei Lamei Adah Seidem Mikal Chema, and therefore if the Edom say he owes half, yes, it's fair. And then the Gemara goes a whole process of trying to learn out one from the other, and the Gemara ends up with the following: Mal piv sheken einay b'hakosher ba'azamra teimah be'edim sheyeshna b'hakosher ba'azamra. That piv you can't contradict, you can't do hazama. Now let's take out the word hazama for now because that opens up a whole Pandora's box that we don't want to get into. But let's talk about kosher. Some say that it's lavdafka, just an expression, but it's really not right now important to us in our discussion. And then you could be makrish. Sakum Deran and says from this Gemara is a pella on the Rambam. It says Mehol Shaminon like the Ran. Somebody's made in Bezdin, and then he says Niskarti, like the Rambam's case in Perlstein, even though the Edom had agreed to him, ain't mashgichim, but you don't listen to him. Because obviously, when the Gemara says Malapiv Shekanein about Kosher, it means this type of case. Because if he stays with the way, if we say like that he's not changing his mind and he continues to say Parati, he says, I mean, if he keeps saying that I owe him the money, he can give it to him. You can give him a matana. He can give whatever he wants. How can he stop? So obviously, we're talking about that the Edom are contradicting him, and yet we don't listen to the Edom. Ain't about kosher azama, right? So you see, you don't listen. That Edom are no good. But says the Rambam says not like that. And the divrei teimahem, the Rambam's words are a pella from this one. Now Rashi not bothered by his question. It says, he doesn't become part. What does he do with his question? He doesn't answer it. Now the Radvaz brings this Rambam on this Rambam side. Brings the questions both of the Maggid Mishnah and the Ran. And he comes up with an interesting answer. And he says, V'ani ba'aniyusi. I love these expressions. These great people are aniyusi. That he wants to answer the Rambam as follows. Perokim Daled, the Edom were there before he said this karti. Before he said, I remembered. He did change his mind, both, not like the Maggid Mishnah. But since they were Edom, he can't rely on his changing his mind. He has what to change it with. He has what he's relying on the Edom. But here in Hilchos Teimin, he said the Skarti, and Rabbi wrote Edom on that. That he didn't rely on the Edom. He just he's admitted, then he brought Edom. So then we believe him. So what does it mean? Means that there is a way that he can't that you can't argue with him. Like the case where he came first, where he brought the Edom. With the Edom were there first. Okay. Let's analyze all this and try to understand the Rambam Shit. And understand the Sugya and the Rambam Shit. First of all, the Ravid's questions. What's going on here? Do you believe him? Do you not believe him? There's a star, no star. How do you get? How do we match the two Rambams? Obviously, there are ways, but do we have the Ran's question? About kosher. How does Rashi answer the Ran's question? If he's aiming b'diburei, then he can give a matana. So how can you say ain't about chosh? Now, let's take a look at the Rambam. The Rambam writes, "Shahare elokuchais oimrim anu ala edim nismachul v'ayrbot." Why does we asked? We alluded to it when we started. Why does he add the words "ayrbot lashtar"? The Gemara says, "Anana edim samchin." That's all the Rambam says. Anana samchin edim. He should have said anu ala edim nismach. Finish. We didn't lie. They didn't say he doesn't know anything. What do we need this bot lashtar business? Now, the Rambam only worries about one question, why he's not a Meisha of Edim. And why he doesn't take from Shabbatim. He doesn't bother by the question that the Ran seems to ask, why does he B'chlal swear if there's a shtar against? And he's not bothered by the other question. But he's got support from Edim, why isn't he swearing? Now, it doesn't bother all that. Only two questions he had. Now, the Gemara doesn't ask those two questions, but let's see. You could say, and the Rambam is bringing all the problems, but he's not. I mean, I'm sorry, the Rambam is only bringing the Gemara's problems. But he's not, he's adding. Why does he add that butler star? Because by saying butler star, he creates all the other problems that the Ran has. He had no reason to say it. That the Rabbi asks. He uses a lotion that we noted when we read it. Hareze edus me'eles. Now, this expression, edus me'eles, that's in Tayim V'nit, is a rare expression to the point that you don't find it anywhere in Rambam. In general, the Rambam, when he writes about Eidim, is here he says, these are interesting expressions of the Rambam. But the Eidus Realis is a unique expression of the Rambam. What does it mean here? And then when he writes, what is he referring to? What case? What happened? And the Yeshanim talk about it. So I want to analyze, and we have over here two very powerful forces that seem to be butting heads. The force called Haidaz Baldin Kimeya Adam, and the force called Adam. What are these two things? A lot of discussion. Famous K'tseis, Malveh, the Rashi, all the diukim that are there. If we would get into that, that's a shiur by itself. But I have written about this, and I gave a share on this issue, not in this context here, but and when we learned in Yeshiva Bab Metzia. And what I believe, based on Diukim and Rambam, it's a lot of different things. That according to the Rambam, Haidaz Baldin Kemeya Adam and Adam himself are two different concepts. Haidaz Baldin is not an amanus at all. It's not Eidus. Not the Torah said you now have the power of being believed as an Eidus or accepted as an Eidus. Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. So therefore, he says that Dazbalin is not an Eidus. He's believed. This is the Xeris HaKos. Rashi brings made the mix. This is the Xeris HaKos. And it's a new Namanas of Baldin. And this is believed on himself. And Bezin just follows what he says. Eidus tells Bezin what to do. The Rambam writes. So when these two forces clash, there is really no clash. It's like they're going in two opposite directions, but not really meeting each other. So really the shaila here is not where the shaila is not the shaila is not whether who do we believe? What should Bezdin do? That's all the shaila is. We have two forces that are not really at all talking to each other. They're different worlds. And therefore, there's nothing here to discuss between them. There's no question, who do we believe? Definitely Bezdin is Chet Chanadin according to them, but Bezdin has to accept him too. Oh, being that that's the case. So again, the question is, what influences Bezdin's approach here? What influences Bezdin's approach more? That's the only shaila. Who has a greater impact on Bezdin? Not who tells Bezdin what to do what. So therefore, based on this, of course, the Eidim, I'm about to l'shar. And he's not really makrish the Eidim. It's not a problem. The Eidim are Eidim. It's two separate types of testimonies. So therefore, when it's negayah to him, whatever is relevant to him is Gzeres HaKosim. Accept what he says. And therefore, Bezdin is Chet Chanadin and Bezdin. And negayah Bezdin has to follow what they do. And therefore, there's no shtar. But there's Gzeres HaKosim by the mixes. He said there's a by the mixes here. And the Eidim don't help for his by the mixes. Because on him, the Eidim can't help. If so, the question that the Rishonim ask, that even though according to him, the Eidim apostle, how does it work for him? The answer is it only helps for him, because that's all Beit HaMikdash tells us, is that him, he's Neman. But Bezdin has Eidim. Bezdin has Eidim. You don't have to say suffix. Maybe they don't even mean suffix. Maybe that's what they mean. Maybe that's what the Ran means. But his din is so, and Bezdin's din is so. And therefore, look, that Rambam brings the Lashon Onu ala Eidim Nismach Harei Botlu Ashtar. That's it. That's the one answer he brings for everything. His stress is that the Eidim are mevatel the shtar. And this is understanding what it says on Nana Eidim Samchinon. We are relying on the Eidim. He says, you know what that means? That it's not the time of the Lekuchais, but this is what Bezdin, the way Bezdin looks at it, the view of Bezdin. Because if it weren't the view of Bezdin, what would kill what the Lekuchais say? That's the kasha that the Rabbi has. The answer is it's Bezdin's view. There's no star in their mind. Oh, and therefore he says, if he changed his mind, and he said, Hare Eidim. So there we say, Hare Eidus Moyeles. V'oisan Alpia. They're not Chet Chanadin. The Eidus helps for his time. The Eidus is an ability for him to change his mind. Even though there's a Gzeres HaKosim does what him K'mei Eidim. And the Torah was mechadish nudamonos k'mei Eidim, and therefore you would think he shouldn't be able, and he can't usually go back in time. That there's Eidim that help him. He can go back in time and change his mind. The words of Eisen Alpia means that you accept them for his time. That's why he changes from Chetchen al PM, where he usually writes Lachtech Adin, Chetchen Adin. Now we do it according to what's like. And that's what the Magen Mishnah says. If he's aimed al dvarav rishonim, alim chazim niskat, he's a yochel litan kim shayim idem sign. I say they're helping him. That's could be that's what the Magen Mishnah also means. Now, what does he mean when he says? What does he mean when he says? That so it could be based on the Mukiyesuf from Batsir that he deals there with the Ran's question. He writes, that you could say according to the Rambam that if a person says Leila Visi after he says, I pay, I don't owe anything, I paid. He says, no, I'm sorry. If he says Leila Visi after he says, I don't owe you, he says, if he admits and then he says Leila Visi, it's much worse than when he says Parati. Because he is denying what he said. Parati is not denying what he said. He just says, I remember something that I didn't remember before. Okay. So according to him, perhaps what he says is to stress that these Eidim are only helping him. But if they were to totally argue with him, then it can't help him. So that wouldn't have helped. So when the Rag and Mishnah asks why wasn't he Mevarer, he says no, for sure he was Mevarer. Because his whole point in Hilchos Time is that the Eidus, my elders B'Tanasai. When he's signing, his Taina didn't change and he's named al Dvar Rishonim. And therefore, in Hilchos Time, he says it has to be the elders of Tanasai. So in Hilchos Malveh, obviously the Taina didn't change. So end result is it's the word of the Rambam, and again, it is a possibility that this Rambam is similar to the answer of the Ran that's brought that we said. You have to be able to fit it into there, but Ran doesn't say it clearly, definitely. But it would be based on the fact that we have to look at the Hados Eidim and the Hidos Baldin, two different things. The Eidus of Edom and the Hidah of Baldin are not contradictions. They cross each other without butting heads, and therefore they have two different purposes. And the only time that there is a connection is if the Edom can give strength to his Taina, which would be in the case of Hilchos Taina. Anyway, seid gesund, Hatzlacha Rabbi.